Hey, welcome back to the House of Trauma podcast. It is me, your favorite podcast host, Kiana Bree, and now let's get into it. Okay, first and foremost, before we really dive deep, I would like to extend an apology for my abrupt absence over the past 2 months. There has been a lot of changes, adjustments, and things going on within my personal life that has prevented me from fully committing to the House of Trauma podcast. And one thing I hate to do is to release half-ass episodes just to say I did it when my heart's not in it, when my mind is not in it, when I'm not fully committed to bringing you the best possible content that I personally can produce. So again, I want to apologize for not announcing my hiatus, but I am back. We are here each and every Wednesday, wherever you listen to your podcast, and we are going to be consistent, and we are going to continue to bring the best of the best content as we work on our self-love healing journey, and as we do the shadow work to eliminate this trauma within our lives. So let's dive deep. Boy, oh boy, did I used to hate being sober. And I know it sounds crazy. Hold on now. Do I need to attend AA meetings? No, I do not. I was for sure a pothead. Yeah, I was a fiend for weed. I started smoking weed for the first time when I was only 14 years old. That was the first time I ever smoked it. Now, I smoked it consistently almost every day from the time I was 17, but it was sporadically, randomly when I was 14 years old. The first time I hit a blunt, I went to this party my freshman year. So it was supposed to be a going away party for a foreign exchange student that I had class with. And one of the girls that I was super cool with in class, she was like, oh, we throwing a going away party for so-and-so at my house. She gave me the address, whatever. I remember my sister did not want to go with me, but my brother did. And it's funny because I was a freshman. My brother was in 8th grade. But again, I'm just I'm a freshman. I'm new in town. I don't really know what to expect or what's going on. I'm just oh, it's a party my brother can come to. She said, yeah, cool, whatever. We went there. It was totally the wildest shit I had ever experienced in my life, but it was still safe for the most part. And so how I ended up smoking weed is we were all standing outside and we were talking. So I had a couple drinks. And so we were all standing outside and we were just talking, and everybody was standing in a circle. And I walked up to the group and we just all laughing, talking, ha, ha, ha. I realized they passing a blunt around a circle. When it comes to me, the guy passes it to me. He looking at me and I'm looking at him, and he looking at me and I'm looking at him. And I just take the blunt and I smoked it. And I guess some people may think it was peer pressure in the moment, but nobody pressured me. Nobody gave a fuck if I did or if I didn't. I was just shit, why the fuck not? I was no stranger to weed in a sense of I've seen so many people in my family up until that point who smoked weed. Adults, of course. I've seen a couple people my age back when I lived in Milwaukee. So at this time I lived in Texas, but anyways, nobody super close to me. None of my friends smoked weed, or nobody that I knew for sure that were my peers smoked weed. But it was in my mind, it was no big deal. So, I hit the weed, nothing weird happened, whatever. Again, that was my first real introduction myself to smoking weed. Now, you may ask, why did I do it? Again, I don't know. I just didn't think it was that big of a deal. Fuck it. Why not? I was adventurous and willing to try things as long as I felt safe about it in the moment. In hindsight, 15 years later, and now I'm thinking it probably wasn't the smartest thing to do to smoke weed in that setting, because I may have gone to school with most of these people, but I did not know them that well. Again, I was new. It hadn't even been that far deep into the school year. And I know one of the number one rules, do not smoke what you don't roll up. And again, I didn't pass out. Nobody took advantage of me. I didn't feel weird afterwards. I just remember being extremely fucking hungry when I got home that day. I don't even know that I fully understood what it meant to actually be high on marijuana, in that moment, because again, I had a couple drinks. I just remember being super giggly and super hungry when I got home. And I mean, that was pretty much that on that. So as I got older, as time progressed, again, I smoked weed here and there, typically just in like a social setting, like at a party, or I might be hanging out like with a friend. I remember me and my sister used to go hang out with my cousin a lot, and the niggas she would hang out with, they would smoke weed. So sometimes I would smoke with them and sometimes I wouldn't. And again, I want to emphasize, I never felt pressured to do so. Nobody ever tried to make me feel weird or weak or like lame for not doing it. It was just like, hey, you want to hit it? Okay, you don't, more for me. Thank you. Great. Like, it was always that kind of experience for me when it came to smoking weed. And I want to make that clear, because I feel like a lot of times people feel like you may only do drugs. And yes, weed is a drug, which I now know and I'm gonna get into. People make it seem like you only do drugs or like you only drink at a young age because somebody pressured you to. And again, nobody pressured me to. I didn't feel like I had to. Like, none of this was done against my will. Everything was me just being completely willing, able, and wanting to experiment with certain things. And that's what led to this. So, again, I would smoke periodically over the course of the next 3 to 4 years before I just became a full-blown pothead, as some may say. And once I started to like really smoke weed, once I started to like buy weed for myself, I became almost codependent. But it would take me years, and I do mean years, to realize just how codependent on weed I had become. So my senior year in high school, so I actually got a couple of funny stories. I remember, well, first of all, my mom blames me for my sisters smoking. I remember one day she told me, and at this point in time, me and my 2 younger sisters, we were all over the age of 18. And I don't remember exactly the situation, what happened, but my mama looked at me and was like, I blame you. She said it like in a joking way, but I believe she really did blame me. She's like, I blame you for your sister smoking weed. Like, this is on you. This is your fault. You introduced them to this. This is your fault. I had to think back, like, damn, I introduced my girls to this. And you know, maybe I did. Maybe I really did. I just remember one time I smoked with my younger brother, and this is when we both was in high school, and we was sitting outside, and I just remember, baby, being higher than a motherfucking kite, eyes redder than the devil's dick, okay? And oh Lord, forgive me. And my mom had texted me and said, you know, it was time to come in the house. She like, get your ass in here. I got school in the morning. Dishes need to be done, all type of other stuff. And I texted my brother like, damn, mom wants us to come in the house. And he was like, look, we still high. I looked at him. He looked at me. I was like, she gonna have our head. And to this day, my brother think it is so funny, because I'm like, she's gonna kill us. Like, she's gonna walk in here. We gonna walk in here. She gonna look us in our eyes, and she gonna be like, y'all must think I'm boo-boo the motherfucking food. Like, because my mom was one of those adults when I was growing up who I seen smoke weed. I see my auntie smoke weed, my uncles, older cousins. I see my daddy smoke weed. Like, everybody did. So I'm like, they ain't no stranger to knowing what it looks like and how your demeanor is when you high. We're as good as dead. You know, that's how I felt in that moment. And after so let's fast forward a little bit, because after I graduated high school, the guy I was dating at the time, he smoked weed. And I'll never forget when he first found out I did, he's like, no fucking way. He's like, you know, he's like, because girls usually don't smoke weed, and it's like a guy thing, and it's seen as like not being cute or like not being girly. And it's just, I'm smoking to get high. I'm not smoking to be cute. Okay, let's be clear on that. But anyways, I used to smoke with him. Like, me and him, we would smoke together. The summer after high school, and that's actually how I met one of my good friends to this day, which was his best friend at the time, and all of us smoked together. And I just remember we were walking, because like right out of high school, we never smoked in his mom's house, just kind of like out of like a respect thing. But as time progressed, it was the motherfucking smoking house at that point. But I remember we walked somewhere, maybe to like get some food or something. often because he stayed like, okay, if you're familiar with the Milwaukee area, kind of close to downtown, like the Marquette College area, it's like a bunch of restaurants and stuff. I think we walked to get food, or like we walked to 7-Eleven or something. And I remember we were walking back to his mom's house and we were just talking, like running our mouths, and I turned around like, where's so-and-so? And we turned around and he like a block back. I cannot make this up. He is a block back and he is just standing there. So we like, bro, what are you doing? Like, come back up here. And he just laughing. So we walk back like, we got somewhere to be. Well, we really had nowhere to be. We trying to get back to the crib. Like, what are you doing? And he gonna say he forgot how to walk. I could not stop laughing because not this your first time high and you forgot how to walk. But let me tell you why I believe him. I believe him 110% because when I was still in high school and I used to smoke, and like me and my older sister and like my younger siblings would smoke like with our friends, and I felt like every time we smoked, we had to take a walk because nobody could smoke in their parents' house, right? And I remember one of my friends had a car, but the first time we smoked in her car, her parents came outside, and when we tried to let the windows down, all the smoke was coming out the car, and she got her ass shooed out. So now we can't smoke in the car no more in front of her house or nothing like that. So we will always take a walk, and I will always feel like my legs like were losing feeling. Like it was so weird, and it would be so funny because I would be walking, I would like bump into somebody, and they like, girl, move, and I'm like, my bad. I feel like my legs is just kind of like on a slant. Y'all know what I mean? Like, is this making sense? My leg would be kind of like I'm walking on a slant almost. It was super weird. So anyways, I said all that to say, when he said he forgot how to walk, I'm like, my legs be doing some weird shit too. Or it used to be when I was like, a beginner, like an amateur. I'm like, I've grown and progressed, and I'm not new to this. I'm true to this. So my legs, we figured things out together. My legs and my mind are on one accord at this moment in time. But I think that's just a funny little story that happened. And as I progressed into college, like the three of us, me, my ex, and his best friend, we all went to the same college. And it was 2 other people there. So it was like a group of 5 of us. It was 3 girls and 2 boys. And we used to always hang out, and we used to smoke together. And this was in our struggle smoking days, where we would all be like, okay, can everybody just come up with $5? $5, we can, get some blunts, roll it up, go to the gas station, get some, I think at that point we was smoking White House. Oh yeah. Real old school. Old school. That's funny. And then we eventually progressed into Swishers as our blunt of choice. At one point we was doing the raw papers, I stayed with Swishers. I can't speak for nobody else until I didn't even smoke weed no more. So I stayed with Swishers for a decade. And, people eventually progressed to like Dutchess and Backwoods and, whatever else they chose to smoke they weed out of. But, yeah, in addition to us like being like, oh, you got $5, it was sometimes it'd be 5 people on one motherfucking blunt because it may be only one person or 2 people had $5 or $10, and we kind of come together, and it almost became like hype mode for some of us because they would even at some point I had to draw the line, but sometimes we would, or they would even like be going outside to smoke when it's like literally freezing, like below 0 outside. At this point, my high is blown before it can even begin because it's so cold outside. Like my hands are frostbitten. So like I said, at some point I would have to draw the line, but we had to find new and exciting ways to smoke our weed, like when blunts wasn't available. And once we eventually like made friends on campus, like people who had their own houses, so we didn't always have to smoke outside, it was on and motherfucking popping. So like I said, blunts eventually progressed into new and exciting ways. So when we wasn't smoking blunts no more, it progressed into pipes and then bongs. And it's crazy because when niggas seen us first smoke bongs for the first time, so we was used to it because we was doing this back home. But now we in college, we hanging out with some new people we done met, and some black people we done met, and they just kind of like, no, that's crackhead shit. Why would I be smoking out of a bong? And it's funny because now every nigga I know, if you smoke weed, 9 times out of 10, you own a bong. But back then, it was so foreign to them. They like, no, this shit is weird. I'm not smoking out of that because, again, they associated with crackheadism. That's a word I just made up, crackheadism. But for real, they wasn't down for that. But on the contrary, they would do the gas mask. So if you've never seen somebody smoke with a gas mask, it basically looks like a gas mask that you put on your head and you cannot escape the smoke. You just got to hit that bad boy one time and your entire face, like everything is consumed with smoke. If you inhale even a smidget, you're going to get that smoke inhalation. And I remember the first time I hit it, I was with my ex and his brother and his friends. And I had never been so high at that point in my life. I'm like, no, this is some crazy shit. Like, the gas mask was definitely one for the books. After a while, I was like, y'all on your own. I just rather hit the bong or smoke a blunt. Like, weed, it ain't for me. I think somebody's friend, roommate, somebody we knew, I remember some white girls, they showed us how to make a gravity bong. And it was like with a 2-liter soda bottle, like cut in half, and like a bowl of water. It was like this whole big thing. Like, look it up yourself and figure it out. But it was like another way to get high, just like to make it more fun than just rolling a blunt. We met a lot of cool people, or speaking for myself, I met a lot of cool people, some friends, some just associates, but a lot of people through just like bonding off of smoking weed. It's crazy how it really brought us together. That's funny, but no, seriously. And I mean, at that point in my life, I never thought that it would be a moment that I would stop smoking weed. And I know it sounds crazy, and I used to tell one of my friends this, because she had smoked weed before, but she wasn't like a smoker. I feel like a lot of people have tried it before without like making a habit out of it. But she was like, girl, what you thought you would never smoke weed, never not smoke weed in your life? No, I did. I seen no end. When I first started smoking weed and when I was in the thick of it, I seen no end, because why would I? I didn't see nothing wrong with it. I tried to be as productive as I could possibly be, depending on if it was an indica and a sativa. So again, I seen no end to me smoking weed. And it's funny because back in my college days, we used to always come back to the dorm, I guess, smelling like weed. The campus police used to watch us like motherfucking hawks. What do they call them? Like I don't know. They was like in charge of the dorms. Like, I know we had like the RH, or I don't really know who they were called, but if you came into our dorms after either like 10:30, maybe like 11 p.m. or something like that, like you had to check in with your ID. And anytime we would like be coming in all together, checking in, they would just be looking at us like, these niggas cannot be serious. These motherfuckers came in here high yet again. Like, it was like an everyday thing. Like, they had their motherfucking eyes on us. And it's crazy because, you know, when you smoking a lot and you smell like weed and you asking somebody else who smell like weed, who just got done smoking, what you do? I smell like weed. And everybody like, no, you good. Let me tell you something right now. You're never good. You are never good. You always smell like weed, and people can always tell. And they hated our fucking guts. They were waiting for the moment where they can get us caught up. And unfortunately, that moment came for one of us. Just very briefly, because this ain't my story to tell, that's his story to tell. But the guy that I was dating at the time in college, my room actually smelled heavily like weed. Well, actually, the whole floor did. I stayed on the 7th floor. The whole 7th floor smelled like weed. But when they came to the floor, they came knocking on my door because, remember, they had been watching us. And they asked to search my room. I told them absolutely not. And then my boyfriend at the time, he was concerned because I wasn't answering my phone. And he came back to the dorm like a fool. And they ended up searching him, and he had weed on him. And it was like this whole big thing that I don't even want to get into right now. But yeah, like I said, they had been watching us, and one of us did eventually get caught up from that BS. So anyways, as my weed habit is progressing, I went from sharing blunts with the crew to smoking multiple blunts a day by myself. I'm telling you, and I feel like it progressed so quickly. Like, at one point, I could only take a couple hits off the bong, or again, I would have to share the blunt with multiple people. And then it went to like, okay, dang, I can smoke a whole blunt by myself, whatever. And then it went to 1, 2, 3 blunts a day. And then before you knew it, I had to smoke before going anywhere, before doing anything. Like, okay, we getting ready to go somewhere. Hold on, let me roll this blunt real quick. Yeah. Okay, we driving, we on the way. I got the blunt roll. Let me light it up real quick before we get there. Oh, you made something to eat? Even family functions, the meme where they be like, you going to take a walk with your favorite cousin. I don't even know that we was taking walks. We were just stepping out in the back or going to get in somebody's car. And again, like I said before, you think you don't smell like weed, but you really do. It didn't matter that we just stood outside for 20 minutes and smoked this blunt. Somebody somewhere when you walked in that house knew you was motherfucking high. But after a while, I just didn't care. Like, oh, well. I remember one time, this lady, she's more like a friend of the family, and we was having like this party. This was actually like just not that long ago, over a year ago, maybe 2 years ago. And at this point, I'm good and grown, good and high, and everybody knows this. And she's just like, why are your eyes so red? What's going on? Why are your eyes so low? Like asking me all this question. What have you been doing? Where have you been going? I looked her in her eyes and said, I'm high, and walked away. Cause girl, play with somebody else, Bookie. I am not 18. I am not 19. I'm nobody's small child. I'm a grown adult, and I'm motherfucking high, and you blowing it. So move. I don't know what the fuck she was thinking. But anyways, yeah, just to further emphasize, like, I wasn't doing anything, going anywhere without smoking first. And I wasn't alone. So that's why I really seen no into it, because it's like the older I got, the more I smoked, the more I came across people who smoked. The more people who didn't used to smoke, like they smoke now. It was almost like it was so rare. Like when I first started smoking, it was rare to run into people who did smoke weed, right? Especially women. And then as it progressed, as time went on, and again, I feel like it happened so quickly. It was rare to run into people who didn't smoke. Like if I ran into you didn't smoke, it was like, okay, oh, interesting. Okay, whatever. So usually if they don't smoke, they drink. But then I did run into a few people who didn't do either, but that's their prerogative. Again, judgment-free zone through and through. It just ain't no shame in my game. But 420 quickly became a national holiday for me and my peers, okay? And we used to prepare for this. I feel like it was only once or twice during the decade long that I smoked weed every day that I had to work on 420. And I was high at work. That's how serious it was. I used to hit my blunt a couple times, at least smoke a half a blunt before I went into work, because I didn't want to be too high, because I always felt suspicious. Just like my boss knew I was high, no matter how well I thought that I was hiding it. But yeah, 420 quickly became a national holiday for us. And me and my sisters, remember my mom said that I brought this upon them. I apologize. But me and my sisters, we used to get together and we would either like cook a ton of food or order a ton of food, get like snacks, just prepare. We would have like 5 blunts a piece. It's 3 of us. What are we doing with 15 blunts? I don't know, but we smoked them all. And then we progressed. It wasn't just blunts. Then it had to be edibles too. And the first time I ever had an edible, it was a weed cookie. And I remember my ex gave it to me, and he was like, here, it's a weed cookie. He was like, but they said it's strong, so you should just take half of it. And so I took half, but after a while, I didn't really feel like it was working. So I took the other half, and bitch, I don't know. I don't really remember the series of events that led up. I just remember him coming back in the room, and he's like, are you okay? And I was like, I'm stuck. Like I was just laying there, and I was like I'm tired, but I'm not really tired, but I feel like I can't move. So I'm gonna just lay here. And he just thought it was so funny. But then, the edibles had to become like a part of our 420 ritual. Like, let's just add on to the high. I remember one year I got some weed brownies, and it was like a Rice Krispie treat from this guy that my brother knew, and I got some for me and my sisters, and we took those first before like we did any other type of smoking on 420. And I mean, hours went by, and I'm like, girl, light up the motherfucking blunt, because why in the world are we not high right now? Like, that's a joke. And I remember him asking me, like, how was it? It was trash. Because I really want my money back. Like, it was so trash. It made no sense. And then it was like, anytime I would go to Las Vegas, the first stop from the airport was to the dispensary. It was to the dispensary, and I just love that I can go in there and like look at all these different names, like all these different strands that they have for the weed. Just decide if I wanted an indica, a sativa, a hybrid, all the fancy names that they have for the strands, and just pick them out. But then also some of them came like pre-rolled. Oh my goodness! And I remember when people started to sell pre-rolls. Instead of just like a pack of weed, like people started to sell pre-rolls too, like on the street. Like people was getting their money. I wasn't mad at them, but and like looking back now, and I'm thinking back on all these times, especially like going into Vegas and going into the dispensary. It was like, how do I want to put this? It was almost euphoric. Like it's like when I think about it, it's like a feeling, like a really good feeling in my spirit. Like it was fun. Like I was excited to do these things and to smoke this weed. Which I wonder how crazy that sounds. And so I'm deep. I'm in the thick of it, of being a quote unquote pothead. And I remember dating this guy later on, and he didn't like it. He didn't like that I smoked weed, which was kind of funny because when I first met him, he used to want to smoke with me. But I started to realize, I think he was just doing that because I was smoking and he just like wanted to be a part of it. That shit was weird. But anyways, he didn't like that I smoked weed, and he didn't want me like smoking in the house. And I'm grown. It's my house. I'm smoking in it. Like, what the fuck do you mean? I'm not going to stand outside and smoke my blunt. And I remember we lived together briefly. And then when we broke up, he came over one time, and I don't remember why. It really doesn't matter why, but he was over there one day and said the house smelled like weed. He's like, "So as soon as I move out, you're smoking in the house?" Yeah, it's my motherfucking house where I pay bills. I'm smoking. I told you that when you was here. Bitch, I'm not going outside. If it's a nice day, I'll sit out on the balcony. Like, I was even doing this after I moved to Texas. Like, if I just want to sit outside and smoke, yeah, but you're not for... Boy, bye. Bye. But when I first moved to Texas, so me and my roommate, we used to smoke all the time. Like, it was like our nightly thing. We would always get together and smoke at night, and sometimes periodically throughout the day, but we were always in the night like smoking a blunt together. It was like our ritual. So again, as all these things are happening in life, there's never a point in time where I'm like, I'm gonna stop. I can see myself stopping. I wonder what I'm gonna stop. Like, it was never even a thought in my mind to stop smoking weed. Okay, and I'm going to tell y'all what happened, why I did. But it was never a thought in my mind that I would stop smoking weed. I used to smoke on my lunch break at school when I was in school for aesthetics. And I remember I lived 15 minutes from school. Our lunch break was an hour. I used to drive home and smoke. But then sometimes traffic would get the best of me, and I don't want to be late coming back from my break. So I would just put like a blunt in the car. Like, I would be smoking, getting ready for class, and then I would bring the blunt in the car with me, and I would smoke a little bit on my lunch break, and then I would smoke on my way home. Like, that's how codependent I became. And I didn't even realize I was codependent. In my mind, I just wanted to smoke weed because why the fuck not? Like, anytime I had downtime, roll up, light up, let's do this. And because I had been doing it for so long, it was just like second nature. And because I knew so many people who were doing it and so many people who were around me, and again, I was fully functioning. So I just really, again, in my mind, I seen no issue with what I was doing and how committed I was to smoking weed. And like smoking on my lunch breaks at school, when I used to start smoking in the car, like I started to find out that most of the girls in my class also smoked weed. So we would smoke together. But a lot of times, again, you think you don't smell like weed, and you do smell like weed. And we would come into school smelling like weed. So just to backtrack a little, when I would go home and smoke, I would change my shirt. Like, I would either smoking just my bra or I was smoking like a different shirt. Like I would just completely change clothes almost. But at the minimum, I would change my shirt before I went back to school because we just had to wear black. So I would just put on a different black shirt and go back to school. But now that I'm smoking in the car, there is no changing of the shirt. You know what I mean? So at one point they like, y'all have to stop coming in here smelling like weed or we're going to start sending y'all home. Like, this is school. This is a place of business. Like, this is not fucking appropriate. And at first I was kind of irritated, but then I'm like, no, they low key right. We got to do better than this. Like, we can, like, it's these people's rules. We paying $14,000+ to be here. Like, the last thing we need is to be kicked out of fucking school because we can't put our blunt down for 8 hours. That's how long the class was. And I didn't even realize like how much, I didn't care that people knew I smoked weed, but I didn't realize how much they knew that I did until I got a phone call one day from, would y'all believe, my dad. And he was telling me that he had smoked some weed. He's like, oh, you know, I haven't smoked in years, you know, whatever, but I did smoke with so-and-so like this one time, and now my job, they was like, I don't know, it was something, he had to take a drug test for work. So he was trying to ask me, how can he pass his drug test or whatever. And I just always see that it's so funny because out of all your kids, you chose to call me to figure out how to pass your drug test because you knew I was going to be the one. He knew I was going to have the answers for him because I've had to pass drug tests too. And once I use somebody else's pee, but I usually don't use nobody else's pee. I use my own. So I know how to quickly get it done and be successful at it. So I'm like, you've come to the right child, and I will give you a step-by-step, a play-by-play, how you can quickly pass it today. So it's so funny when I be thinking about just different memories. My dad, like different conversations that we had. I'm like, wow, that's crazy. He really called me to figure out how to pass his drug test. And so it also brings me back to that lady who's a friend of the family questioning me about being high. And this is years later. Like, girl, my parents know, my grandparents know, like everybody knows. This is no fucking secret. So you all up in my grill ruining my high. For why? It make no sense. But me and one of my younger sisters, who my mom blamed me for becoming a pothead, and at one point she really smoked more than me. So I'm like, shit, she outdid me. They both outdid me. But anyways, me and this particular sister, like, we lived together, and I remember at one point it was just like a routine, like a ritual. It was almost like I was on autopilot. Like we would cook. I mean, like, good ass gourmet ass meals. We would smoke, we would eat, and we would watch Netflix, or we would watch a movie, or we would watch something, or we would like go separately to our rooms and, you know, watch whatever. And it was like we were continuously doing that. But the meals used to be like so top notch, like so top tier, that one of my sister friends actually told us we should start a foodie Instagram. And this was like in 2016, 2017. And here we are in 2023. And I'm like, we really should have started that foodie Instagram back then. Now, I don't even eat meat. We don't even live in the same city. Anyways, another story for another day. It started to become a routine. It started to become a ritual. I was just smoking all the time. Again, I became codependent, and I didn't realize how much my body now needed the weed, how much I depended on it, how long I could not go without it. And that's when I realized weed was in fact a drug. And at this point in time, you're probably asking yourself, like, what? That's when you realize weed was a drug? Yeah. Because a lot of people, when we talk about weed and when we talk about drugs, they're usually a separate conversation. And yes, some people say weed is a gateway drug. I would have to disagree. I think that people smoke weed for different reasons, or start smoking weed for different reasons than what they start doing other drugs for. I believe, and I know for a fact, that people can smoke weed their entire lives and never even be interested in doing another drug. I know people who have tried other drugs and never tried weed. So weed being a gateway drug, 110%, I will have to disagree. However, is it a drug within itself? Should it be included in the drug conversation? Yes. And before I get too deep into that, I want to say, because I've told you about all my fun experiences, all the fun different ways we smoked weed, all the good times, 420, all the food, all the blunts, all the laughter, but there were bad times too. or bad experiences. So one time a good friend of mine decides to have this grand idea to stash, because he was in charge of stashing the weed in his dorm room. And I think at one point we might have took turns, but we typically left it with him. And because it was loud and he didn't want anyone to smell it, he put it inside of his deodorant container. So at first we like, okay, that was an interesting place to put the weed. It doesn't make any sense. Roll it up. I think we might even hit it out the bong that day. And I just remember, for me personally, speaking from my own experience, we all was fucked up that day from that deodorant weed is what we call it. But from me hitting it the first time, and I just remember inhaling like normal and then kind of getting choked up in my throat. And I didn't feel right. I felt strange. I felt like my breathing was restricted. I felt like I had just inhaled a shit ton of fumes, and this may potentially be my last day. And I tried to breathe. I tried to drink water. I halted. I stopped smoking that particular weed on that particular day, but I just remember not feeling right. I was seeing things on the walk from our friend's house back to our dorm. It was like this tree, and it was weird, and it was shaped like I was gonna sound so weird, like the Grim Reaper. And so now I'm like freaking out, like I'm like flipping out, and I'm like, oh my God, if I walk past this tree, the Grim Reaper is going to get me. And nobody else sees the Grim Reaper. They're like, you're fucking tripping. I'm like, no, I'm not tripping. He's staring dead at me. And if I walk past this tree, I'm going to die. That's why don't nobody go see it but y'all. I'm like, we got to take the long way around. Long story short, over a period of time, he's like, no, I got you. Like, let's go. Let's just walk. It wasn't the Grim Reaper, obviously. He wasn't trying to kill me, but I was really fucking tripping. Okay. Like, that's the point I'm trying to make. Like, I was really fucking tripping. And once I got like back inside, and it seemed like it was like just really humid, and I just literally couldn't breathe. I couldn't lay down. The water wasn't helping. They ended up calling 911, and thank God they just came and checked me out, told me I was fine, and just kind of like, if you want to go to the hospital, we can take you, but I'm telling you, there's nothing they can do for you. Like, you're totally fine. You just probably shouldn't be smoking weed, honey. And then I had to have like a meeting with the director of the dorm hall. Like, it was like this whole big thing. And I will never let my friend live it down. I'm like, the weed and the deodorant, really? That's what we doing? Y'all, I could have been expelled or something. Like, I don't know. I guess I couldn't have, because they didn't do it. But again, just a crazy experience. And there's another odd negative experience that I had with smoking weed. And at that point, we was just never really the same for me. But I don't want to get into it in this episode. I'm going to get into it in our Pills and Potion episode, which will either be released next week or the week after. So you got to listen every week to figure out what experience I had that really changed the motherfucking game for me as it pertains to smoking weed. But anyways, after years on years of smoking weed and thinking that there would be no end, God told me to stop. And I had got this message so clearly over a year ago, well over a year ago, when I was meditating constantly, and the Holy Spirit was telling me that I had to stop smoking weed. And there was a few times where I did stop for a little while. And then I started to realize how truly codependent I had become on there, because I couldn't eat. I had trouble sleeping. I just literally was almost fiending for weed at certain points in time. And then I would go a while and I would smoke weed again. And then I would stop and I would start again. And I would stop and I would start again. And then it started to be longer stretches of time where I would stop smoking weed. And then every time something like, wow, crazy, traumatic, like extremely awful from my perspective would happen, I would be right back. And I learned that this habit of smoking weed was a vice. It was an escape when things were hard. And because I had lived in such tragedy for so long, what my sister called a series of unfortunate events throughout my life, and I didn't realize that weed was helping me medicate that problem or these problems, like it made it easier for me to digest. I probably handle certain things more well than I would have in a sober mind, because I was never really in a sober mind. I mean, think about it. Smoking as soon as I wake up, smoking throughout the day, smoking right before I go to sleep. I was never fully in a sober state of mind, because I hated being sober. I didn't like the feeling of not being high, of not having a blunt, of not hitting my bong, of not having some edible or some form of something that was putting the THC in my body. Once that message became clear from the Holy Spirit that I needed to stop smoking weed, I started to put things into perspective. And that was the first time I really sat down and thought about how long I had actually been smoking weed. And I remember looking myself in the mirror and saying, Kiana, I want to know who you are. I want to know who you truly are outside of the weed, because I didn't know who I was. And I mean, I can't say that like a ton of things have changed and I'm just like a totally different person. Like my reality took a 180, like my personality took a 180, because that would be false. That would be a lie. But do I feel like I know myself better? Yeah, I can handle things, differently. I can't say if I'm handling them better or worse than what I would have handled them a year ago if I was high off my ass. But what I can say is that it had been a full year since I smoked weed. And it's crazy because I stopped smoking weed last year. And a month later, I actually needed to take a drug test for work before I became a flight attendant. And I really didn't have a worry in my mind that I was going to pass the test because I hadn't smoked weed in so long. And it's kind of crazy how things play out, because I could have got that job when I was in the thick of it. Right? There was no way I would have been able to handle this job when I was in the thick of smoking weed, because after getting the job at any point in time, I was prone to a random drug test. And as much trouble as I had kicking that habit, kicking my smoking habit, I could have fallen off the wagon at any time and jeopardized my job. This was by far not an easy habit to kick. So again, I must say, weed is truly a drug. I felt anxious a lot, and I felt like I was always brushed with the temptation of smoking weed. And again, I know so many people who smoke weed, so I'm always around people who smoke weed. But then I'm like, nope, I'm a federal employee. I can't do it. And they're like, oh, okay, no, you're right. So I have had a lot of support, behind me stopping smoking weed. So again, there was not a peer pressure factor. Like nobody's trying to force me to do anything I don't want to do or should not be doing. But the temptation is always around. Sometimes when I'm sitting in my room alone, there's no weed around. There's no weed in this house at all. And I would just be like, what the fuck is that smell? And it would smell like weed. And I'm like, is this a joke? It's like a phantom blunt, like trying to lure me in to buy some weed. And you want to know what else is crazy? After I had got the confirmation from God that I needed to stop smoking weed. Every time I would buy weed, something would go wrong. Like it would either be trash or I would get shorted in some way, and I'm like, things is just literally not working out. And it's so evident, it's so clear that nothing in the universe is ever going to align properly for me to be able to smoke weed. I just need to stop. I just need to give it up, because I'm holding on to this vice rather than fully healing and fully being Kiana, because I don't need these things. I don't need drugs. I don't need alcohol. Like I don't need anything to be me. I don't need anything to heal. I don't need anything to go through life. I don't need anything to sleep. I don't need anything to eat. Like I'm fully capable of doing these things on my own, which is why I have to let this weed go. And I wanted to fully build a close relationship with God. Like, I don't want to be high, reading my Bible, so high I'm forgetting to pray at night. Like, I'm waking up in the morning and I'm barely saying a prayer, like a quick 1, 2, and then I'm going to roll up a blunt. Like, it was so much. And again, I'm not judging anybody who does it, anybody who wants to do it, anybody who's in that thick of it. Like you're in the thick of smoking weed like I was at one point in time. That's fine. Like, I don't want you to feel bad about it at all, but I don't want you to be so codependent on it like I was, that you are not able to fully function in life without having your weed like I was. And I'm not ashamed. I remember I told everybody for a full year straight, if I ever quit this job, if I ever leave this job, the first thing I'm doing is rolling the blunt. Well, let me tell y'all something that I hate to admit. A few days ago, I smoked a blunt, or I hit a blunt a few times. After a year of being clean, after a year of being sober, and it wasn't because I felt like I needed it. It was just simply because I wanted to. So now I'm jeopardizing my job, right? And then on top of that, I didn't like it. I don't feel that euphoria that I felt years ago when I was in the thick of it. I didn't get excited. I didn't want to do it more. I don't need it. I've been able to kick it. I don't hate being sober anymore. I'm okay without it. And it's crazy because I never thought that I would get to this place. And even me saying like, yeah, when I quit my job, if I ever don't do this again, I'm going to start smoking weed. I'm not. Now I'm at a place where I can't see myself going back. I hate that I even backtracked and did that, but I'm sort of glad I did, because now I know I'm not missing out on nothing. It's just not me anymore. It's not for me. It's a part of my story. It's a part of what I guess I needed back then in life to kind of help me get through. Maybe it was just a phase, but either way, I'm so grateful to have a God that loves me, that let me know that I didn't need this anymore. I didn't need this as a crutch. I didn't need to hold on to it. And I damn sure don't need to go back to it. And for anybody who is in the thick of it, anybody who smokes weed, you are free to do whatever it is you want to do in this life, and don't let nobody tell you otherwise. But if you thought at any point throughout this that you've been holding on to smoking weed for all the wrong reasons, I encourage you to have that conversation with God, and to also ask yourself, do you know who you truly are outside of smoking weed? Do you too hate being sober? My name is Kiana Brianne. This is the House of Trauma podcast. Don't forget to email all your advice questions to houseoftrauma@gmail.com. I'll see you next week.